What's up, guys, and welcome to the Poker Rajas podcast. My name is Richard, and today with us is Madhav Gupta. Madhav Gupta is a poker entrepreneur who's been around poker and poker business for over a decade. He's run the poker room at Casino Pride successfully for over 7 years, and now recently has started his own website. Let's talk more about. Oh, just a sec. Okay, let's get him on. Madhav Gupta, what's up, Maddie? How you doing?
I'm good, Richard. I'm good. Very good to see you. Very good to sort of be on this channel as well. I think it's killer. As we were sort of talking for a minute before sort of this started, I think it's brilliant that people are out there doing sort of content like this. Um, this is the kind of stuff that's going to excite people as time goes by. I don't know how much my interview will excite stuff, but just overall sort of new poker content that's just not about the cards, but that's about the lifestyle of poker. That's about sort of people in and around poker. I think that's very interesting.
Thank you so much, Mary. I mean, I'm so excited to have you because I literally have not spoken to you for over 5 years, and today I'm seeing you again after such a long time. It brings back a lot of memories. I mean, obviously, we had some fun back in the day. You have been around poker for such a long time. Why don't you tell us how you discovered poker?
Before I tell you that, tell me why haven't you given me any rake in 5 years? That's what I heard when you say you haven't spoken to me in 5 years.
Oh my God.
I push all the time. I always ask
Getting to the business right away.
No, so for me, poker has been sort of, it's been a fun journey. It's been a long journey. I've been involved with the game since pretty much 2004. And we started, like me and a bunch of our friends back in Delhi, we started playing purely for fun. And we actually started by sort of playing with Monopoly money. And we played with Monopoly, like literally, like not money that was like Monopoly, like it is in a lot of games now in India, but like truly Monopoly money just for sort of shits and giggles. And, we played, I think, almost like 3 months without any money whatsoever. So really, like the game itself is that exciting. And it was funny, but we had basically read a cheat sheet off the net with sort of hand rankings. And, between streets, we'd be passing the sheet around, looking at it and being like, okay, this seems good. I raise. And then the other guy who you've raised is taking the sheet back and being like, should I make the call or not? And it was still fun. And I mean, and that's fun about this game. And I've had sort of, between then and now has been sort of a ridiculous journey. Like I said, I started playing absolutely purely for fun with no money whatsoever. From there, I was sort of playing professionally for a living for 3 years. Started a site outside of India first, and I think it was as early as 2009, 2010, I had an international site. We were trying at that point to sort of do online poker in India, but of course, sort of the legality and the cleanliness around it wasn't quite there. Ended up getting into live operations, obviously, as sort of, as you mentioned, did live operations in Goa with Casino Pride. For like you're saying, been 7.5 years doing that. Shifted to Bombay last year, September of last year, basically to get into Baadshah Gaming, which is not just poker, but which is multiple games of skill. Of course, I understand that our conversation will be more sort of poker based, but we are about sort of poker, fantasy sports, and rummy as well. I got to get that plug in, Richard. And it's been a fun journey, and sort of I refer to myself. It's really pretty much once I go right.
I'm sorry. I think I'm disconnected. I didn't get that. I didn't get that last part. Uh, well, I'm sorry. What were you saying?
I was talking about sort of the progression of the journey, and it sort of started with sort of an online international site, moved to Goa with Pride Poker.
Right. So I did get that. So yeah, definitely. I mean, why did you actually incorporate fantasy sports and rummy onto a side? I mean, it's a very interesting concept because rummy is traditionally played a lot more than poker in India, and obviously fantasy sports is something that actually is doing really well across the world. So to bridge everything onto one platform, how did you actually like how did this culminate? Like how did that come into play?
at, and we've been wanting to do sort of Baadshah has been an idea that's been in our heads now, and my sort of, it's obviously not just me, it's me with a couple of my partners. It's been in our heads for a couple of years, and we've been looking and waiting to see when the ecosystem around us is A, big enough, and B, clean enough, long-term credible service. That we believe is now. I mean, there's still a lot of work yet to be done, but we believe now there's some level of stability in that ecosystem. The idea was that there are multiple games of skill out there that sort of, the various state governments in India let you sort of to provide for players. The idea was that why should players have to go from one side, from one provider to a next to a next? We give them the opportunity to play off a single wallet, so that so they don't have to have monies across places. I mean, online is a big part is about credibility. The way, even our internal philosophy at Baadshah has been, and this is the same philosophy we had at Pride Poker as well, which is that for us, we are really, as organizers and operators, we are really sort of a mix between a bank and a hotel. We've got to give you great service, and we've got to make sure that your money is secure, both during the game and after. And that's all our role is. Operators tend to forget that. And there's skew on either one side, and I think that's sort of the clean line, that's sort of the narrow line that you got to walk down, because at the end of the day, when there are 8 players on the on a table, they're really just playing against each other. We got to make sure that the game, sort of the software itself, is secure, and the site and the promoters behind the site is secure, because I mean, this is an environment where it's fairly cheap to set up a new product. I mean, just to give you an idea, our cost of marketing on a monthly basis is probably twice the cost of my software. So there are very low barriers to entry in this space. So you got to make sure, as a result, and there's great sort of returns if you can do it right. So the idea is that as a result, rather, you end up getting a lot of short-term operators that come in and sort of just want to pull out what they can for 6-8 months. We've tried to see how are we here sort of 10-15 years down the line. I mean, we're no SoftBank. We can't give you a 300-year strategy, sort of like the CEO gave on his last visit to India. But yes, definitely, we are a startup, but 10-20 years, I think that's reasonable. And the question is, what do you do that you're still relevant 10 years from now? And we believe credibility is going to be a massive part of that. So we believe that if you have found that credible answer, why do you need to look at 3 of them for 3 different sort of games? The other idea of having a single sort of platform for multiple games is there are poker players that play rummy. I, for one, now, for example, only play rummy. I consider myself a professional sort of rummy player now, and I'll dabble in some poker as well, if it's easily accessible. Fantasy sports, I think, has barely scratched the surface in India. Fantasy internationally has grown really well. In India currently, I mean, kudos to the one player that is currently around. And they're doing a really good job sort of with it, and they've grown this entire market. But today, they are still 90-95% of the entire market. Fantasy is something that I believe has great legs going forward. But the single largest challenge with fantasy is that the growth of fantasy is actually going to be a factor of the growth of overall sports in India. Sports other than cricket. I mean, that's the reason why today we only get, because fantasy is relevant and exciting if you can watch it on TV. We're looking at kabaddi in the future as well, because that's sort of got decent traction. But sort of new sports that come in, it's a question of sort of more and more TV usage coming in. But the idea for us, the overall idea with Baadshah was that players get the choice to move between sort of different games. And that's what will result in different levels of skill. If you start doing sort of just big high-end guarantee tournaments, you'll get a lot of noise. You'll get a lot of sort of eyeballs for sure. You'll make some good money in the short term, but you won't actually grow the market. Today, if you pick any of the 4-5 top sort of the top 7 operators or guys sort of involved in the business of the sport, they would have 80-85% of that database. Pick any 4 or 5 of these. And that's a problem. The problem with that is that there are not enough people who are yet who've heard of the sport of poker. And poker is a sport; it needs to be promoted as a sport. That's why I said I sort of really like the concept of what you're doing with this podcast. The sport will be promoted when it's not just about the sport, when there's sort of content around it, when there are leagues. We saw sort of one launch last year. We've seen one sort of do a pre-launch earlier this year. We've seen an announcement from a third. Whether which works or not is really a question sort of for time to tell. Which one of these really do well? Because I mean, A, the format has to be fun and interesting, and B, obviously execution is super key in anything that is new. But just overall stuff like this, the fact that there are so many people out there that are trying to go and grow the market, the more and more people that understand that sort of poker is a sport, poker is a game of skill, and it is not sort of gambling. When it breaks past that taboo is really when it will boom. Poker today is still, it's scratching the fringes of society. It really is. I mean, think of your own poker experiences. Think back to when you started playing, and think back sort of, to maybe when you were 6, 8 months into it seriously, and you would tell people that you wanted to play poker professionally, what was the look you would get? And I guarantee it wasn't one like, oh, this guy's got a sort of partner, life and part.
It wasn't a good conversation.
It wasn't a good conversation for sure. And it definitely wasn't that this guy's got his head on his shoulders and he knows what he's doing. But that's changing. That's changing. I mean, there is, we've seen this at Pride as well, definitely on the live scale. And of course, online gives you a much wider medium to be able to sort of do this and get the results. But definitely, even on the live scale, the number of kids that we've got sort of out leaving your IITs, IIMs, and deciding to play poker professionally, that's massive. I remember when I started playing poker in 2004, it was tough to get a 6-handed game going twice a week. And today, I mean, today you have at any point of time, sort of tens or hundreds of games running around this country across states. And I'm not even counting online.
Talking about, I think like the video is playing because I'm echoing.
No, there's no video here.
Okay, because I can hear my own voice. It's gone now. Maybe if you reduce the volume a little bit, it should fix it.
Sure.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine now. It's good. So I mean, you have actually seen the progression because you ran the Pride Poker Room for such a long time. You actually hosted one of the first few large field tournaments that actually brought in the era of tournament poker, because obviously tournament poker has become a very it's an amazing way of showcasing poker, and at the same time a lot of newcomers want that poker experience because of these events. They are actually able to experience the whole poker lifestyle in some form or the other. But actually you were instrumental in it, because I think you hosted the first IPC, the IPRT. I think you hosted.
IPRT hosted Pride before me, but the IPRT was out of Pride. We hosted the UPC. We hosted the first series of Poker Guru. We did Aces. We did Golden Aces. We haven't until now done any of our own though.
Yeah, I mean, but things have changed from then to now, but still, things are, like you said, it's a very small minority that actually plays poker or recognizes poker as a sport.
A is that, and B is overall, I'm still, a little 2 ways on tournament poker. I believe that tournament poker is not long-term sustainable for most players. If you look back at sort of multiple series, look at a year like 2012. That was the most prolific year for tournament poker in Goa. Between the 3 casinos, Pride, Royale, and sort of Carnival, what was Carnival then, in a 52-week year, we had 56 events.
Wow.
Okay. And I don't think most people know the stat. We had 56 events in that year. What ended up happening, however, was if you look at the POIs across those different series, your top 20 would be made of the same 35 people. I agree, and I understand that that's with a pinch of salt, sort of that number, because the game was a lot newer. So the skill set differential between sort of the ones who knew, sort of relatively knew what was going on, and those who didn't know at all, of course, was massively different. Um, Hell, I won a bunch in 2012. I mean, that's how easy those fields were. But that was the so of course there was that, but it's on an overall basis. See, I don't think tournament poker is the way forward for most new players. I think tournament poker is more sort of for the fame and the glory. The real sort of results, my opinion, in this is that the real results will come from cash games because there's a lot more of the game that I believe can be acted upon in sort of in a cash game as opposed to tournaments. So I've always been a little on the fence in terms of how good or not tournament poker is. Like I said, I think it's great for names and sort of creating a buzz and creating a market. And of course, it's a great, big sort of for sort of, what is called the moneymaker effect. A guy sort of dragging into a $50 satellite and winning the main event at the WSOP. I mean, of course, it's massive. You do have sort of those fairy tale stories, and you'll see that in the Indian scene as well. But for the most part, tournament poker ends up being sort of negative EV for most players. Most
That's so
average
true.
players, sure.
That is so true. I mean, because it's hard to win tournaments. I mean, yeah,
It's hard.
no matter how good you are.
Don't get me wrong. I personally, I really enjoyed sort of tournaments. I went, funnily enough, sort of being sort of a decade and a half in this game, I actually went for my first World Series this year. And it was an absolute blast. I mean, to be sitting in that environment, one of the days at the Rio, I think they made some announcement that they were running some 1,200 tables at the bloody Rio alone.
Wow.
Every other casino is running 60 tables as well. I mean, we don't do that in a week and go up between me and Royale combined. It was an atmosphere, and if you think about it, especially in the main event, so the table I was telling this to someone on my table today, I said if you look around, every table is $100,000. So there is sort of it was definitely a lot of fun. It showed me that we have a really, really long way to go before sort of we get enough people in interest. Before you start getting more randoms to play the game, I think really for the game to grow long term, we need to have. So this can't be done on a structural level, but really it will grow when more randoms start playing against other randoms. When they start sort of winning and losing, but they're always winning and losing amongst each other. Because now, what's and this is a sort of scary phenomena I've seen definitely on the live scene, especially on high stakes, a little bit on the online sort of sphere as well, where you're basically getting tables with 6 or 7 sort of regs and 1 or 2 randoms. That is the scenario today in Vegas. That should not be the scenario in a new nascent market. The fear is that you're getting a lot of operators who are looking at short-term returns. So they're just trying to push any game. They're not considerate of the long-term ecosystem that they need to build. We're cognizant of it. We try to do this as well. I mean, we can't sort of make it a 6 to 7 sort of random and 2 reg split because that's too much still for a city like Goa, which relies on outside traffic to come in and play. But for example, at Casino Pride, we have a 4 reg rule across tables. And we have absolute last criteria selection on who is a reg. A reg isn't somebody who lives in Goa. If you're posting multiple updates that you're a reg, you're on our list as a reg. It doesn't matter whether you come on.
Am I a reg or am I a fish? Because I would be really disappointed if you call me a reg.
I would. I mean, what I'm thinking of calling you may not be very polite on your channel. So I'm going to stay away from my classes. But say I'm going to those 4.
Oh my God, this is gonna become.
It's gonna be one of those.
This is gonna be a plus 18 podcast very soon. But okay, so actually, I wanted to like dial back and speak about I mean, you obviously told us about the website, which is very interesting of your vision, and at the same time, I totally agree with you as far as cash games over tournaments go. I think cash games are more plus EV. It gives the new player or the fun player a more realistic chance of playing the game, and
Right.
also I think it'll make sense for him to continue playing if he plays a cash game because at least he has a chance. In a tournament he's like I think it's very unlikely he's winning, right?
Exactly.
Uh,
You can run hot, but you can't run out for 12 hours.
you can't, you
You
can't.
can't. I
But
mean,
like
because I want to stake him. Someone who can run out for 12 hours, I want to stake them.
yeah, yeah.
Which is the other
I
thing. So I have a great announcement for anybody on listening to sort of this podcast of yours.
okay.
Anybody who buys sort of on a 1.5 markup and above for on any of these Indian players or any player across the world, I'm willing to make them a Baadshah Pro.
So what? What? If anybody what?
Anybody who consistently buys on markups of 1.5 and above, not cents, buys. Those are the guys.
Buys.
Yes, those are the players I want on my side because those are going to be your sort of juice stations. So we don't care about anybody who can sell at a 1.5 markup. I want players who can buy at 1.5 markup.
Who can buy the action?
Yeah.
Oh my
Anyone
God,
who's
there's so many.
he's a Baadshah Pro,
There's
he's love it for
so
life.
many. There's so many.
And
Yeah.
finally, we'll make our own Baadshah stable.
I think 1.5 should, I think the criteria should be 1.8 or 2, because 1.5 I think a lot of people are buying very very easily. I think.
At 1.8 and 2, I'll give them my seat and I'll come on that side with you. We'll host the podcast and we'll ask this guy his vision for the future.
That could be fun. That could. So I was actually heading back to your transition to Pride Poker Room, because obviously you told us you were a professional poker player, and you did play professionally for some time. Also, you dabbled into the site. How did you actually transition to the business end of poker? Because actually Pride Poker Room is actually something where you actually got to the other end, the other spectrum of poker, and ran with it. So how did that happen?
So Pride was interesting. I mean, there is sort of two levels to the story here. There's one is a really funny story. I was sitting on a cash table with sort of an unnamed operator. It's a small industry, so you should be able to figure out who the operator is. But I was sitting sort of on a cash table with an operator, and he was really worried that the house was cheating him on rake. And so he sat down with a sort of a napkin and a pen, and he would pause the sort of dealer after every hand and ask him what the rake was, and started writing this down on a piece of paper. And we were playing, and this was sort of 2009 and 2010 early. And I was playing a 500,000 with him. And, I was not cognizant of rake at all. I mean, but as a player, I've really never thought about rake. It was just something that never sort of crossed my mind. Really, a lot of my games were home games, so and home games back then were all sort of devoid of rake. And I'm sitting next to this sort of, to this gentleman, and I'm sort of watching him through the night, and he runs out of plays from this paper, and then he pulls out the next paper, and he starts writing it down. And this was a long sort of 12, 14-hour session. And I'm looking at this, and I'm like, hey, this seems like the good stuff. Like, I mean, this is sort of, there is sort of some real legs here if you can sort of do something with this. So that was a part of it. And then, when off my visits to Goa, I found that there was a lot lacking in terms of, there was a real gap in the market. Both in terms of sort of high stakes games that were coming to Goa, because by this time I was already sort of flying around the country and playing high stakes games. And I saw that none of us ever wanted to come down to Goa. And that was criminal, because what ended up happening is that the Delhi guys were playing only the Delhi players, the Calcutta players were only playing the Calcutta guys, and so the Bombay were playing only the Bombay players, and there were these sort of super massive high stakes games across these three cities at that point in time, let alone what we did not even know about sort of the scope of South India at that point. And there would really be sort of 2, 3, 4 of us players that were flying between cities. Other than that, everyone was just playing their home cities. There was also a big, massive difference in what a player wanted. And I think that's what made sort of Pride Poker super successful back in the day, was understanding what players wanted. The fact that we were coming from sort of a poker player mentality, and understanding this concept that, listen, as the house, I should not really be dictating diddly squat. Like I said, our goal is to make sure that it's fair, and that you get your money at the end of the day, and you get great service while you're there. And that's about it. Our goal is not to tell you how long you can sit for. It's a casino. Our goal is not to say who can and who cannot sort of play. There were lots of swaps that went on sort of between operators and players. there's a lot of stuff that's gone down, or sort of that's been swept under the carpet, that did go on in the industry and still does to a little extent. And that, I mean, that will always be the case. But the idea is that as you get more and more operators that are looking over and above and beyond that, I think is what will be good sort of for poker. So for me, it really was sort of bridging that gap. Even at Pride, the Pride that was of 2011 through 2014 is not the Pride that's the 2015 through 2017. The 2011 to 14 Pride was all about super high stakes games. It was about running 1,000, 2,000 games. It was about connecting high stakes players from across the country. I mean, we ran in 2011. We ran a 5,000, 10,000 blind game in Goa. That's still not been repeated. And our games were always super juicy. But today it was sort of the Pride was and has always been sort of the players' room. It was the place where you came and you hung and you chilled, even if you weren't playing poker, because it was that place, right? I mean, it was supposed to be, and this is obviously not just me saying it. This is sort of the feedback that we've got over the years. The Pride of today is very different. The idea is that, of course, when we were running games that big, the fish were getting sort of cleaned up way too fast. The game started becoming more reggy as well, and it started becoming a lot of credit and not a lot of sort of clearances. And as the operator, we had to clear out 100% irrespective. So we found that there was a shift. There was a lot more new, sort of younger, smaller buy-in players that were coming into the industry. So the Pride of today is more sort of a push on a 100, 200, 200, 500 table. If I have the choice between running a 5-1 and a 2-5, I prefer to run a 2-5. I think we need to sort of push games and tables at a grassroots level. We need to, in fact, if it was economically viable, I would actually run a 25-50 live and go. I think that's the kind of stuff which is why I believe sort of markets like your Bangalore's and your sort of Calcutta's are very, very good for the long-term sustainability of poker. Because these are the guys who tomorrow are going to play sort of 100, 200 or 5-1. There has been a lot of focus, obviously, by operators on pushing on just the big games, because those give you the greatest returns. But those returns are not sustainable. And the idea is, what do you do to build the whole ecosystem? That's what's important.
I mean, also the fact that I'm echoing again.
It's not on my end though.
Okay, one second. Let me just fix my sound. Okay, it's gone. That's weird. Anyway, so I was coming to so yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you in terms of the size of the game should be smaller because more people will come in. There will be more money in the system. People will win smaller, so the money will stay for longer, and it's obviously better for the poker ecosystem. But high stakes games are always interesting, man. You know what I'm saying? So why don't you? Because I remember this, okay, and I remember this, and like you said, you used to hang out with us, and I remember after the session, I was hanging with you. I think Georgie was around, and we were walking around the ship. You told me I want to show you the deck, and we were looking at the deck, and when we came back, there was this Teen Patti game running, on the second floor on the opposite side, and you told me that this is a private game, and I was looking at it, and there was a bunch of cash, like literally high stakes poker sort of cash. Like there was bundles of cash in front of everyone. I said, Maddy, this looks insane. What kind of game is this? And you said, Richard, this is a 20K, 40K Teen Patti game. And you told me, Richard, there's 7.5 to 8 crores on that table. So that was ridiculous. A. B. You also hosted a bunch of like real high stakes games. Like you said, the 1,000 used to happen quite more often than the 5,000, 10,000, because I was around for, I mean, obviously I didn't play, but I was around for one of the games where we were running 1,000, 2,000. So tell us, I mean, because, like I've grown up watching high stakes poker and I've grown up watching these shows. Like, has there been an interesting story from these high stakes games that you used to host? Because you've hosted them for quite some time. And
I'll tell you, the fun part of poker is that there are insane stories no matter whether it's high stakes or low stakes. But I'll tell you, I'm not a funny sort of hand in a high stakes. Okay, I'll tell you sort of about this one guy. Again, I'm not going to name names, but he was sort of this super massive whale for us. And I mean, he fed this industry. Okay, let me put it this way: he fed this industry really well. And he actually tried to negotiate with me that Ace King and King 10 are 50-50. And I'm like, pray tell, because on this, I want to hear this calculation. And he's like, see, he's got a king, I got a king. He's got an ace, I got a 10. And I'm like, okay, that's true. And he's like, how many straights can he make? He's like, Maddy, he can make ace, king, queen, jack, 10. That's about it. Or he can make ace, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's about, those are the only straights he can make. But look at me, I can make ace, king, queen, jack, 10. I can make king, queen, jack, 10, 9. And then he sort of runs down all the straights. And I'm looking at this guy, and I'm like, I don't know what to tell him, because I don't want to be sort of rude and be like, listen, that may be some of the dumbest stuff I've heard in my life, But I mean, he was sort of, he was a fun player, and like I said, he's feeding the system. So anyway, later, sort of, this is pre-game, right? We're just having a discussion on hand. So half an hour into this sort of game, we go and he's sitting down on this poker table, and he gets, the fun thing about high stakes though was that high stakes was always about ego, right? I mean, that was the single biggest driving factor in what makes high stakes games fun, both to play and to watch. The reason why so many people can watch sort of good high stakes games that have absolutely nothing to do with it is that there's a lot of ego on the table, and as a result, you get sort of the tangential sort of stuff of sort of that. You get sort of ego, you get attitude, you get arrogance, all of which makes a sort of great sort of TV to watch. And so similar stuff goes down, and this, with this guy, sort of 10 minutes, an hour later, he's on the table, and basically goes, it was 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, so compulsory straddle. So it goes 1,000, 2,005. Someone makes it 15, he makes it 45. This other guy ships it in for 5 lakhs. Folded around, this guy calls, the turnover cards, so it's AK versus AQ, and the guy with the AK says, you want to do something, do you want to run this twice or something? And this gentleman with the AQ goes, yeah, give me my money back. So then he's like, no, that's not doing something in AQ. How would you want to do some sort of probability, or you want to run it multiple times? So he's like, you know what? Let's run this, other than on sort of 5-5 in the middle, let's run it for 50 lakhs on the side, each. And then he turns around to me and he goes,
sorry, what? No, what? I heard it, but I don't know if I heard it.
You did.
Know what I'm saying? What did you say?
5-5 in the middle. He says, screw you. I can tell you that my ace queen is going to win. So I'll give you the offer of taking your money back with ace king. Or if you want, let's run it for 50L on the side. 50 each. And so this player looks at me, he goes, Maddy, will you take my guarantee? And I said, yes, for sure, I would. And sort of the other players sort of had guarantee as well, and they ran it. And they ran it once, and there was queen on the window, and it stayed good.
Oh my
And
God.
that's what makes high stakes poker fun. It was just absolute pure ego. He was right. I mean, ace king is absolutely not wrong in this stuff as well. What you going to do against field players, though? You've heard this on the table. Mujhe feel aa gayi thi. What you gonna do?
I need a second.
No, for $100,000, it doesn't matter. The queen of the window. It's a cruel game.
My God, easy game, easy game.
Okay. So I'll tell you another story. It was on the poker table, but not poker related, right? So we had this other guy. You remember sort of this friend of mine, Vic, who used to play a lot of the Pride, right?
Of course.
Vic was famous for creating incidents. He always was, I mean, and so, and now I was at my very end with him, and I'm like, listen, you cannot create any more instances here. This is a place where people come to have fun, and they don't want to see you screaming around, so you can't do anything today. So like, okay, done. Comes to me sort of, and this is when the poker room is on the second floor on the other side, the old poker room. And I'm sitting at the corner on sort of one of the tables, sort of doing something on my computer, and he comes up to me and he's like, Maddy, we need to take care of this. This guy on my right just picked up 10K off my stack and put it in his pocket. So I'm like, mate, what you talking about? No one's picked up 10K and put it in his pocket. He's like, listen, he's picked it up. Firstly, he's not even picked it up in a 10,000 chip. He's picked up 10 1K chips and it's lying in his top pocket, and his top pocket is leaning and we can see it. The whole table can see it. So I asked somebody else on the table if they're like, yeah. And this other guy was super drunk. And I'm like, is that correct? Is he picked up? He's like, yeah. And the whole table's like, listen, we can see him. He's picked up this thing. And so this guy was, he was sort of 5'8", short, thin, so sort of super thin as well, right? And then you have Vic. And for your sort of viewers and listeners who haven't sort of seen Vic, Vic is a guy that makes me look small. So let's put it that way. And so he starts getting amped up. This guy, I went up to him and I'm like, listen, sir, we can see. So if you've picked up this 10K, first you haven't even picked up a single chip. You've picked up 10,000 rupee chips and you put it in your pocket. Oh, we can see it. We can still see it, and just return it and let's call it a day. Forget about it. And this guy's like, no. Then suddenly he starts shouting and he goes, do you want to fight? And so, of course, because I've already, and I looked at him, I'm like, no, we do not want to fight. We're not going to do any of this stuff. So I looked at him and I'm like, so, let's calm this down and let's forget about this. It's all good. And then this guy turns around and does the one thing he does in his life, which I've never seen. I've never read it or seen it in a movie. And I guarantee you, I will never see it again in my life. He turns around and he goes, you do not want to fight me. I'm a black belt. That you may hear in your life, but what you will not hear, Richard, after that is he then lifts his shirt up and randomly across his chest he has a black belt tied. It's not holding, not wearing the getup. And it's not even cloth. It's a black leather belt that was tied across his chest, holding nothing.
What?
Yeah. At which point I'm like, you're a black man. We don't want to fight you. Please go home. Take the 10K. I mean, this is entertainment enough. You see the fun stuff. I mean, you see definitely it's a fun industry. You see some insane stuff. I mean, you see sort of the kind of prop bets that are made. It's a fun area. I mean, it's challenging. There's a lot more to poker than just the cards. And I think that's what we've got to build on.
Yeah, and also in terms of promoting Pride Poker Room, I think you were very instrumental because till date, people remember you from Pride Poker Room. There's so many people who've had great conversations, great relationships with you in terms of seeing you from time to time whenever they fly down to Goa for a cash game, and that was an aspect of the business or your stint with Pride, which I think was truly spectacular because the amount of people that actually have that recall or have that affection towards you is it's ridiculous. The number is ridiculous. But coming to the fact that since we're talking about Casino Pride has taken a big chunk of the Baadshah Gaming platform, and tell us more about that.
So the idea, when we looked at Baadshah Gaming, we found that a massive portion of reservation. See, today the online poker market that is there is for the most part, save for one or two players, catering to the same group of poker players. Like I was saying to you earlier, if you look at sort of 4 or 5 of your top sort of 7 or 8 operators, everybody knows the same set of people. The idea was, how do you get it to the masses? How do you get it to be more casual? How do you get it to be where it is sort of one of your weekend things to do? I mean, think about poker 10 years ago. How many people could you tell that you were going out for a poker game, or how many poker games were there? It wasn't the thing to do. I mean, if you look at sort of the American market, which is the most prolific in terms of poker, you're looking you're looking at a culture where the weekly sort of hangout is a poker game. And to do that, to get India to a stage where there's more and more people playing poker, it requires sort of obviously the kind of education that is trying to go on today with different lobbying bodies to move it to games of skill. And two, for more and more people to hear about it and understand it. To understand that there is a genuine career opportunity here. This is a sunrise industry. I mean, there's a career opportunity from everything from, obviously the most basic and obvious which is to be a player, but it's there in being an operator. It's there in being ancillary services. It's there in being specialist towards sort of marketing of it. It's there in being the coding behind it. I mean, look at any aspect. There's so many ancillary services around it. And all of those will grow. That entire ecosystem will grow when masses get to it. For masses to get to it, you need to understand that gaming, and I mean e-commerce on an overall basis, and definitely gaming, is still a fairly new concept for India. While our smartphone coverage in India has grown and will almost triple by sort of 2021, it's still fairly low. For that, you need to add other factors. You need to have our idea of bringing Pride on board was, what does Pride do? Pride is a corporation that has over 4,000 employees. They're a corporation that gets 2,500 gamers walking in every day. That means they have 2,500 gamers that believe in the security provided by Pride. Why have we gone ahead and blasted at so many places, at least in the case of poker, that I am sort of behind Baadshah Gaming as well? It is not a personal sort of Napoleon complex, so to speak. It is the idea that I've been involved in this industry for a while. I've had, obviously, like you're stating, multiple interactions with sort of a whole multitude of people, and more importantly, mostly good interactions. I mean, I'm not sort of washed in milk. I'm sure that I have certain detractors, but I could probably count the number of detractors I have on my hand. I'm not even saying whether they have basis for that or not. I mean, the fact that, so that says that, when you've been sort of around for 7.5 odd years in the industry and you've had sort of good relationships, it gives a certain level of confidence. And whatever little confidence I can give, I think Pride gives multiple times that level of confidence. And that was the idea. The idea was to have, well, the idea was twofold. The idea was obviously to have a live connect, so that we're not just some random sort of web address. We are, we are truly a click and mortar business. We have an online arm, but we have a live arm as well. And there is a touch and a feel. If you have an issue at the end of the day, there is theoretically somebody you can catch. There is somebody you can go talk to. As you would have followed on various groups that are there on social media, there's lots of sites that have come and gone. There's lots of sort of grouses with those sites. There's lots of cases where we do not know who these promoters are. So what do you do? What is your sort of area of what's your redressal to grievance? I mean, today there's a reason I put my name out there. I know what we do. I know how we manage our funds. I know how we do cash out. For example, for us, cash out is super important. So we actually do cash outs twice a day. You should, other than on a weekend, not have to wait more than 12 hours for a cash out. Our goal is constantly striving towards a cash out. Our goal is striving towards customer care. We've recently set up our own call center. And that's cumbersome considering that we're going to be getting to, given our current pace, we're going to get to 100,000 signups by next March. So our call center team, by the 100,000 signups, are almost going to be 40, 45 people. And we're not trying to outsource any of these functions. Our goal is internalize all of it and give back to people exactly what they want to do. And Pride has stood for the same values. Pride is obviously being a firm that I worked with very, very well over the last sort of, almost a decade. So that was the idea of bringing Pride on board, to really till sort of Baadshah establishes itself as well. On a very frank note, ride on the coattails of their credibility, and two, to have that live base, because we get sort of live operations. In fact, the idea is that, not the idea, well, it's already in action, that Pride Poker Room is now called Baadshah Gaming Live.
Oh, wow.
Yes, so I mean, and that was the idea. We're actually moving to where we're taking over an entire floor at the Pride. And we're going to be getting into live rummy operations there as well.
That's amazing, and people are very excited about the live tournaments you're hosting. And somebody in the chat actually mentioned that he says that when will the live tournament poker, the poker tournament with Baadshah happen? Because because the DPT buy-in is not friendly to my bankroll, and but
That's exactly. Sorry to jump into that, but I could not agree with you more. We did a lot of homework when we made our, Baadshah tournament sort of price buy. Our goal was that we want to be sub a lakh. We want to be where the players' cost in and out of the event, including flights, tickets, and the whole shebang, including tournament buy-ins, should be under that 1 lakh bracket. Um, See, now the big challenge is that a lot of players still, of course, want to play tournament poker. It's, for the smaller players, it's their one big shot at getting their massive payday. They can get 30, 40x of their sort of buy-ins. And obviously, it is sort of the fame and glory. And let's not kid ourselves. Most, if not all, poker players are playing for fame and glory. The only question is to what degree. I mean, I'll tell you, when I play tournament poker, I'm only paying for fame and glory. I want to show every bad beat. I want to show every bluff. That's probably why I'm a bad poker player any longer. But I'm playing to sort of get some bad blood going. And I think a lot of sort of tournament players, maybe not sort of the newer guys who are trying to get into the scene, but the older ones for sure. So I completely agree with you. The idea has been that we believe that the other competitor in the market is doing sort of bigger events. That's their strategy. They have enough players that are coming in. We would like the ticket sizes to be small and rather focus on higher guarantees. Our goal and our reason behind that is very simple. Is that, like I said, I think it is negative EV for most players. The idea is how do you get them involved again and again by keeping that exposure lower. We were supposed to have our Baadshah live event on the 22nd of September. We were trying to do something sort of completely new. To be honest with you, I'm genuinely a little sad that we had to pull back on that date because other than sort of the time and other than sort of the money and the effort that we put into sort of doing something that was going to be, and I guarantee you, spectacular. It was a lot of time that we put into that. I mean, it was something that we were very, very excited to do. We wanted to do sort of open air on the weather deck, give a completely new sort of concept to tournament poker in India, and sort of to take it along. Also, what's happened with with sort of the competitor tournaments is that it's very serious. I mean, listen, I'm paying good money, and this is the case not just with our competitors in India, but this is the case sort of internationally as well. Tournament poker has become just very serious. It's sort of super nitty. It is, everybody's playing 7% ranges. Your standard sort of pre-flops are 1.8 to 2.6x, and it's standardized. I mean, the differential is not there anymore. There's no one going back. There's nobody playing sort of 9-4 off. Not
there are no battles on the table.
There's no battles, right? I mean, it's standardized. You sort of, it's coolers versus coolers, and a few of this. Oh, what could I do? I had 3 BB left. I had 8 BB left. I had to shove. Look at my SPR. I had to call. It's just standardized technical analysis. I mean, that is not what's been the fun part of poker. Poker's always been fun because of all the random elements, not the standardization. I mean, standardization is what's driven a lot of the mathematicians into it, but the fun is about all the other characters, right? So our idea with tournaments also is that what our event is going to be more about fun. Don't get me wrong, it will be sort of by the rules. There will be sort of a professional TV, and you'll have all of those sort of bells and whistles that are there across tournaments. But the idea is sort of, like our tag, seriously fun. That's the concept you want to push. What happens today is that when you get, and we noticed this back in the day as well, that we would actually run lower cash action during tournaments, or at least cash per hand, sort of rate per hand in Goa would be a lot lower during tournament time than otherwise. Because when my sort of fish and uncles, as sort of as the winds are called, would come to the poker room, they'd see 60 sort of young kids in glasses and hats and hoodies with headphones, and they're like, this is not what we want to play with. So it's too serious. It needs to be a lot more fun. It needs to be a lot more inclusive. We're too small and too new in industry to be that exclusive.
Fair enough. Like the more social the game gets, I think the more popularity and the more like new people actually will come in. And I'm looking forward to it. And in fact, a lot of people in the chat really looking forward to this tournament because
I mean, we're looking forward to hosting everybody as well. It's been a while since we've run some tournaments in Goa, and we've always had fun. I mean, our tournaments have always been fun. I'm a little biased, don't get me wrong, of course, but I mean, it was an environment. I mean, we've always tried to like I was saying at the top of of this podcast, is that we've always tried to strive to be sort of the players' room, and our tournaments have been an extension of that. Let the rules be followed, but other than that, nothing else. We really need to sit here and tell you what to do.
Yeah, and I remember that with everything you've hosted, I'm sure this will be fun as well because I remember so many times that you're busted in the tournament, but we're still hanging with you, and we're sitting there for like 4 or 5 hours doing nothing, absolutely, literally just loitering around and just chilling and having a good conversation and a good time. And I totally agree with you, and I'm totally looking forward to this tournament as well. Why don't you talk about?
We're going to announce it in the next 3 or 4 days, the new dates.
3 or 4 days. Okay, so that is because I'm getting repeated questions. Mole, especially in the chat, is really looking forward to this. So at least a couple of people are like definitely booking onto this tournament ASAP. So yeah, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your side with Baadshah. Are you gonna actually go for a pro team? Is that something that is on your mind?
Anybody who does the 1.5 and above markups, that's our pros.
Who buys action?
Who buys action at retarded markups? I want you on my tables.
Oh my God, I don't even know what to say.
Those are the. I'll tell you what. On an overall basis, in terms of sort of this pro team, we're fairly convinced that we do not ascribe by the current methodology of the pros. I think that pros function on 2 broad areas. One, they work towards building the credibility of the product by saying that, listen, we too are sort of associated with this and we know this to be a good product. 2, they build on giving industry knowledge to the operators themselves in terms of what you should do. And the third thing that they do is they're supposed to be out there, sort of to call a spade, they're supposed to be out there social influencers to bring sort of people to your product. So when we looked at all 3 of these factors, what we found is that we've already checkmarked the box in terms of the credibility, in terms of bringing player knowledge. The way we've set up our poker marketing team, and this is what we've done for all the other verticals as well, is everybody in marketing in our firm is an ex-pro in that game. So our entire marketing team for poker are ex-poker pros. Our fantasy guys are ex-poker fantasy pros, ex or current. We don't care. We're happy for them to play on the job as well, as long as they're not playing during work. And in the case of rummy, are sort of professional rummy players. And the idea is to do what sort of back to basics, what made us successful at Pride, keeping our ear close to the ground, realizing in players what we would have wanted as players ourselves. And that's the same philosophy with Baadshah as well. Even in the case of Baadshah, I mean, we have the treasure chest. We have the ability to get in there and do these massive guaranteed tournaments. We don't want to. Our goal is that today we've started with sort of 200 and 400 rupee buy-in events, where we've given, for example, for a 400 rupee buy-in event, we've given 150% guarantee. I think that's fairly large in terms of the total number of guarantees, especially at those numbers. We do not see, so just 2 points on those tournaments. One, I do not foresee for the next year to have tournaments much larger than 1,000 rupee buy. Our goal is, if we have the ability to give those guarantees consistently, I would rather give you 1,000% guarantee in a 200 rupee buy, and let there be that overlay which goes to the base. The problem is, in any industry, there's the pyramid, and everybody in the pyramid is concentrating on this half, because that's sort of the most remunerative pyramid. it is getting, the point is, if you do not sort of grow it here, that peters down, right? So over a period of time, that's sort of going to get smaller and smaller and smaller as it disappears. What you need to do is you need to grow that base. That base will grow from lower end events. It's the same philosophy with Pride Poker. It's the 100, 200 tables today that will push the 500,000s of tomorrow. In the tournaments, it's the same idea. For example, our Thursday tournament, again, we've given a 150% guarantee. We do not expect to hit more than 100 players. The day we hit 150 players, we will give you a 200% guarantee. Even though theoretically we do not do a rake-free tournament, because that word to me is sacrilegious, we will give you consistent guarantees that are greater. So effectively, we'll always give you an overlay. That is our goal. Everybody wants a little bit more than they give, and we understand that. So our philosophy with that is the same. I guarantee you this today, if we touch even 130 entries, and I include rebuys and add-ons into the 60K guaranteed event, that is the day I will up it to 200 people.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic, and it makes complete sense. And I completely get where you're coming from. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about the Rummy platform and also the fantasy sports platform on Baadshah Gaming? So first of all, like I'm completely new to playing Rummy online. So tell me how it works. I mean, do you all have a point system? Like, what are the stakes, and how do you get on to play?
So in terms of on a how does it work scenario, it's very similar to poker. You have poker, you have Rummy tournaments, and you have Rummy for what's called pool Rummy and point Rummy as well. It's across stakes. You can play from as little as 4 rupees a point, as much as 1 lakh a point. If you have any idea of Rummy, 1 lakh a point is way bigger than that Teen Patti game you saw.
Yeah.
If you're playing 1 lakh a point, you got to be sitting there with 3-4 Cs. And so what most people don't know is that Rummy is really the single largest online games of skill market in this country. Today, either of the top 2 players in Rummy are larger than the entire poker industry. Online and live together. Either of those are bigger than the total industry. So Rummy is definitely something that we believe will have a lot of legs going forward. We want to convert a lot of the Rummy players towards poker. I think that's going to be a massive, massive sort of differentiator as time goes by. The Pride has always had super juicy games. And that's the same philosophy for online, sort of for Baadshah as well. How do we give our poker players the juiciest games out there? And it's going to be, like I said, broadening that horizon and getting players from other industries. Fantasy is an area that I think has great scope going forward. A single player is today the industry. They've grown it dramatically, but there's so much more to do. Fantasy, however, like I said, is a factor of sort of TV. It's a factor of which sports are getting higher viewerships, what are the ratings on TV. As those go up, our possibility to purvey those sort of fantasy sports as well will be there. Fantasy is fun though. I mean, we've come up with a brand new concept, super exciting concept in fantasy as well. We came up with something called the Chota game. So, for sort of listeners of yours that aren't familiar with fantasy on an overall basis, it's the equivalent of, let's say, there was an India-Sri Lanka match recently. You can't obviously bet on India or Sri Lanka because that's sort of sports betting and that's not a game of skill. What you can do, however, is between India and Sri Lanka, you make your top 11 players. Who would you pick between the two if you were selected? And if you were a selector, and when they're doing live stuff on the field is when you get points directly on you. And there's a live leaderboard. So if you're sitting with a bunch of friends, you're seeing your sort of name going up and down on that board. So the guy hits a 4 there, you get 6 points here, and so on. So I mean, that's general sort of fantasy. That's the daily fantasy, which is for the match. We actually introduced sort of this super innovative thing, and it's called a micro fantasy. And it was the coding of that was incredibly painful. And I think we're the only guys around the world that have done in-game fantasy. what we call sort of the chota game, which is that in the case of, let's say, a T20 match, you're picking your team only for 7 overs at a time. So seven,
Wow.
7, 6. And instead of 11 players, you pick only 3 players. So the idea is it's a quicker, shorter format. It builds well into sort of, this new prevalence of ADD that's around everywhere. And we're all always doing sort of 300 different things. So this is quick. Now, who wants to wait a whole match as well? And it's the same logic why sort of T20s become more popular than one days. You know what? The purists will watch sort of test, but for sort of T20 more than one day because it's a quick sort of format, 3 hours in and out, you're done. Chota game is sort of 25, 30 minutes and you're done, and you have a result. So that was fun. I think there's a lot of growth that is possible for Baadshah across platforms. It's there in sort of 2 or 3 new games that we're working on as well. And it is within games as well by offering new and fun stuff to do. So that's overall sort of the Baadshah philosophy.
Amazing, and I think fantasy very awesome. Like because sweating a live game and seeing your bet, it's crazy. It's crazy. And I know about the competitor you're talking about, and they've done extremely well based off only cricket.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's actually tough to imagine any other game in India because I think only cricket gets the amount of viewership
Today.
not only from the today. Fair enough.
I mean, the hope is, I believe that there will be. I mean, it's sort of a chicken and egg sort of problem here. That, I mean, there aren't enough good sportsmen in other spheres. So how do you do it? But there's no money in anything else, so nobody else sort of wants to get into it. I'll give you an example. I have a friend of mine that I went to high school with. 1 year, my senior, he has been competing for India in the Winter Olympics since 2000. Okay, when he first started going, he was the only Indian Winter Olympian. He had to fly himself to the Olympics.
Oh my God! Wow.
Imagine, I mean, this is a guy who has gotten sort of silver and bronze at the Asian level.
That's depressing, though.
It is. It's super depressing. And in the initial years, he used to fly himself down. And kudos to him that he still kept up with it. And he's still representing India, and he's still up as sort of bet for a Winter Olympic medal. But I mean, the state of sports overall has been fairly dismal in the country. But as time goes by, I do believe people are going to get tired. I mean, more and more content has to come. I mean, you look at Sony. Sony's just acquired the 10 sports array of channels. They have some 8 or 10 channels now. Sports channels. Star, of course, has 7 or 8. These 16, 18 sort of players will need content, and which is why new sports will start doing well as time goes by.
That's awesome, and I think like having more fantasy sports and having fantasy sports, become famous and more and more like played on. I think that'll help viewership as well, because I can totally imagine the more people that bet, they want to watch that, and they're gonna
play a game of skill. There's no betting here.
You still make a wager. It's still it's skill. It's skill.
This has been drilled into us. We drill it forward. We got to push.
You deal with some tough crowd.
We got to work with this terminology. We got to make sure that we keep it clean and clear. Keep in mind, we're not just trying to grow poker. We're trying to change mentalities. We're trying to change sort of mindset. We're trying to change social opinion on a sport and saying it's a sport and it's not sort of flipping coins on the side of the road. We need to make sure that people understand there's a differential between flipping coins on the side of the road and playing poker. Which is why I'm become a little preacher-esque almost about it. But I mean, I'm going around saying that, listen, it is a game of skill, and we need to identify with that.
That's good. That's a start. I agree with it. I think even I should start doing it. I mean, I think I have a moral responsibility to do it now that you're talking about it. Also, tell us more about this professional rummy player that you've become. Why Are you a professional rummy player to begin with? And then,
You
what
know,
kind, what
I
stakes are you playing?
I will not tell you the stakes.
What a
Uh,
guy.
Suffice to say, they're a lot of fun, and it's always the edge of your seat. Sort of, I'll put it this way: it's the nosebleeds of rummy. Uh, but it is definitely it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's just I love card games. I love sort of the math. I mean, really, frankly, for me, what got me very excited with poker was the math behind poker. Um, and it actually is, and you hear this a lot, especially from people who've been involved in the game for a while. There's a lot more to poker than just the game, and there's a lot more that it teaches you about life. It teaches you about relationships. It teaches you about sort of just general awareness. Sort of being with it, because you're sitting on a table with sort of 6, 7 of your closest friends, whose job for the next 6 hours is to scam you, and then you're going to go out for dinner post. You know,
Essentially, yeah.
it teaches you a lot of compartmentalization, because you will give some suckouts and you will get some suckouts from these sort of close friends of yours, right? And it's about how do you separate all the emotion and all of that and keep it just to the math. So that's really what got me into poker. I've always liked sort of card games. I would love to continue to play poker a lot more. But I decided that the day I started sort of the live operations with Pride, I would stop playing poker. Um, Definitely on a long-term basis.
You've
Um,
you've
yeah,
also moved from Goa to Mumbai.
I moved now. That was this last year. That
Okay,
was,
and I mean, where are you from? I don't even know. Are you from Bombay?
I'm from Punjab. I'm actually from Patiala.
You're from Patiala. Wow, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
I'm born and brought up in the print, man. We keep it real.
Keeping it real. So how has the transition been? I mean, you from Goa to Bombay, are you loving it? Are you hating it? You're hating it, aren't you?
Sorry?
No, it's okay. You can carry on. I'm just gonna talk to the chat for a bit. You can have that conversation. Amol, is there any other question that you want to ask us? And we have Ronnie in the chat as well. Who else do we have? Tanay is here. Cool, cool. Yeah. So you would. I mean, you're really hating Bombay, aren't you?
I'm really hating Bombay.
Are you?
Not at all. I like it. I'm happy to be out of the wilderness. I've been 7.5 years in Goa, and Goa is a great spot for a vacation, but it's fairly one-dimensional. Especially when you're in, sort of in gaming, because you're doing sort of late nights all the time. You're sort of, that's when you're at work and you sleep through the day. Super unhealthy lifestyle for sure. And it's, I mean, this whole sort of industry is anyway not one that lends itself to uh, sort of to a well balanced lifestyle. I'm actually liking the balance of sort of Bombay. I'm liking the speed. I think I missed a little bit of the rat race. I think it's been great for Baadshah. I think we've gone a lot further here than in Goa. And I think in Goa we would have had a little bit more of a Susagad attitude and sort of, you know what? Do we really need to be at work 7 days a week? There's a beach half a kilometer away. Surely we could step out for 2 hours and grab a beer. And it's tough.
It's never one beer though. It's
It's
never
never
one beer.
exactly. It's never one beer. Which is why I think it was crucial for Badsha to move here.
Okay. Okay. Why don't you? I mean, you've interacted with hundreds and thousands of players. Do you have like any favorites in terms of like poker players or like people you've seen like really grow, in the economy and that you admire or that you look up to or
So not particularly. Like I said, I mean the game itself is not just about the game. I think my qualities of people that I would admire in this game are those that are doing a lot more, both as a result of the game. Those that have, and there are countless stories of people who have come from absolutely sort of, and I've seen this myself in Goa as well, sort of with kids that have come and literally come and taken their savings and brought it here on the table because they have a belief that they are good at this and this is sort of skill and they have that skill. And I've seen them make it. Um, those are the guys who I admire. I mean, that tenacity to continue to strive through it, because this is a game that is incredibly difficult, because there's so much volatility, there's so much variance, there's so much sort of emotion that goes up and down. To keep a sane head is massive. I think people who have in the industry done a lot of good with the resources that they built as a result of this, I think is very good. So for me, those are sort of the kinds of people I would admire in it. I think, I mean, in terms of players, I don't particularly, just only because every player has their own style. And you go to, I mean, no matter what technical analysis you read, you study, how many books you read, you would be able to play the way you can play. And it's going to be incredibly difficult to find somebody else who has that similar aspect. So there may be parts of somebody's game that I like, but to say, oh, this is the guy whose game I think it is, I don't. I don't think there's anyone who's yet solved. And they're all working on solving it. There are people who have different aspects of it solved. And I think the idea should be to try to pick up those influences as opposed to a single individual.
Super. Super. I mean, you're just being diplomatic for no reason. I don't know. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
If you know diplomacy, I'll tell you all the people I hate in the industry. If you want, I'm joking.
That's not a long list, I'm sure. But anyway, like, tell us what else can we expect from Baadshah Gaming in the future? What is there to look forward to in terms of other promotions or anything new that you're doing in the future? Why don't you tell us?
Our idea with Baadshah is long term. Like I was saying also at the top again, at the top of this program, our idea is what do we do to build Baadshah over the next 10 to 20 years. Our idea is not what do we do today, what do we do tomorrow. It is a lot more holistic idea. The idea is to build the whole ecosystem. The idea is to work with the government and having regulatory bodies that we can ensure that there's a certain level of legitimacy of that there's a certain level of legitimacy of operators out there. That is our goal, really. I mean, in terms of what are the promotions, what are that kind of stuff. I mean, there's literally, I have this book sort of that's at the top of my table in the office called The Lean Startup, and in the book the guy says that, listen, you're going to fail when you do marketing strategies. The idea is that if you fail quick. I don't know which is the one that's going to succeed for Baadshah. We have literally, I have these whiteboards in my office, and we have 15, 20 different marketing things that we want to do. We're going to plug away and throw all of it out there and see which pull back. But at the end of the day, I think there's no rocket science. You got to do stuff well. You got to do stuff with a conscious heart, and you got to do it consistently. And I mean, I think that's it. And there's no sort of magic to it other than that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm done, man. And the weird thing is that I can actually listen to you talk all day. But
I love listening to myself talk as well.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. I'd love it if I could talk like that. But we're at the end. If you want to go check out Baadshah Gaming, baadshahgaming.com is where you have to go. Poker, rummy, fantasy sports, everything under one platform. Go check it out. Obviously, if you like the podcast, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and also follow our Facebook page. We're done here. Thank you, Maddy, for being with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hope to see you soon.
Yeah. See you guys.
Bye.